Hey Moonlovers, welcome to another episode of All Things Moon, Lunar Wisdom for Everyday Life with myself, Kelly Jones, and today we have a little ginger guest here, a little indie crystal yoga loving cat. She loves to join in on Zoom calls and stuff. She's come to join us today to give her a bit of her wisdom as well. So, 5 go retrograde. Yep, we are fully into retrograde season. Not that there really is a retrograde season, but we had like a little window of time there a while back where we actually had nothing retrograde for a while and everything felt as though it was actually could move forwards. But here we go. So planets are grinding to a halt left, right, and centre. And that means that some of the things that we've been trying to get on with may also do the same. So, things to look out for. So, a couple of things that I thought I would tell you that how I kind of know that the energy is different right now. So, for ages and ages and ages, I've got this, you've probably seen in my podcast, I've got this malachite pendant. I've just been wearing it constantly. And then all of a sudden, yesterday, I just felt this urge to pop my astrophyllite crystal on, feeling the need for like black stones. So, we on the new moon in Leo ceremony the other night, I was looking for my black onyx, which actually was right in front of my face up on my shelf in front of me here, but I couldn't find it. And I ended up picking up black tourmaline. And black tourmaline, they recommend that you have a piece outside or by your front door and by your back door. Ancient magicians used to use black tourmaline to ward off earth demons. So, to give you an idea of warding off those negative energies and, all that shadow stuff. But retrogrades are definitely going to bring up and make us go over some of our shadow stuff for sure. We've currently got Neptune retrograde, and I have been for ages now. I've been all about roses. So if you follow my podcast, you know how much I love roses, rose everything. And actually, I have just finished a cup of matcha latte made with oat milk and rose syrup, my homemade rose syrup. But instead of rose tincture, I've got my own homemade, you can see here my scribble on it. This is blue lotus flower tincture. And blue lotus flower really assists with helping us dream more lucidly. You'll know if you've had too much of this because you'll have the craziest dreams that you think you can never get out of. So be warned, if you have some, don't have too much. Just go with a small dosage. But blue lotus does have a slightly calming effect. It helps you to sleep better, but particularly for dream work. So retrogrades. We're just going to have a brief look at each one. We're not going to take a deep dive into each one because I want to keep this short today. But retrogrades, in case you don't know what they are, when a planet is retrograde from our perspective on Earth, it seems that they're going backwards. So it's like an optical illusion. So, like sometimes when you're on the motorway and it feels as though, a car is going backwards past you when actually it's because they've slowed down and you've taken over. And that's kind of what can happen with the Earth. When planets are retrograde, no matter how far away they are, they get a little bit closer to the Earth, so we feel their energies more strongly. And it can give, because the Earth can overtake those cycles, it's quite hard to explain, but I think you get the gist of what I mean. It's an optical illusion where they appear to be going backwards. And so as that energy comes into, I always describe a retrograde as though a planet is pulling into port. And when a tanker comes into port, it creates big waves as it's slowing down to stop. And I always think that as the planet is becoming and turning retrograde and slowing down, that is when those big wave effects of the planets are felt the most. So it's what you might call the shadow phase, hence the need for the astrophyllite and the tourmaline. Um, so that as that comes in, those waves get stronger. They call it a shadow phase, which happens leading up to the retrograde period. And then as it starts to turn direct and starts to get ready to move forwards again, that's when we feel it again. So sometimes in between, we can have like almost like a settling down, almost like we've forgotten about it in a way. But it's always good to have that awareness so that when any situations crop up in relation to the energy of each planet, the archetypal symbolism of each planet, and the area of your birth chart that will be showing up, at least we can then not be a victim of it. We can have a little bit of empowerment and choice in how we respond to whatever it's going to bring us. So, astrophyllite is one of those, it's a multidimensional stone, and it helps you to connect to realms beyond our own understanding. So it's a very powerful energy, this stone, to do with development, spiritual development, particularly. And it assists in rising to the occasion and taking the steps for to go on for the journey, if you like. So it's like a spiritual growth stone for sure. And I feel like that is what is coming up for me personally. But I like to share these things with you because you never know, it could help someone out there. So, retrogrades, just one on their own. So, most people these days, even if they don't know anything about astrology, have heard about Mercury retrograde. So, for instance, my brother, he thinks, it's all a load of rubbish, what I'm talking about. But if he gets stuck in traffic or something's going wrong with his computer, he'll message me and say, "Is Mercury retrograde?" So, and then he'll say, "Bloody Mercury retrograde." But especially if we have multiple planets involved, of which we have four planets and a little planetoid called Chiron, all going to be retrograde together. And actually, won't be digging into this one today, but by September, we will have Uranus retrograde as well. So, preparing ourselves for all of this. Yeah, a retrograde basically means what it sounds like, going back over something. So you will be called to go back over whatever that planet energy symbolizes. And then you will, if you know your birth chart, you can take a look, you can see where those planets are in relation to your birth chart, the houses, and the planets that are in those houses to get an idea of how that energy might show up for you. And if you've got no idea at all, of course you can book in with me and we can take a look at your birth chart together. So, knowing your birth chart is key to understanding how these reflections can show up for you. But I'm going to try and give you a little general overview of each one today. So, first one being the most common one that we know. We've just had a new moon in Leo on Thursday, and currently Mercury is in Leo retrograde. So Mercury turned retrograde on the 17th of July and will turn direct on the 10th of August. So Mercury goes retrograde about 3 times a year for around about 3 weeks. So it's the closest planet. It's quite common. Mercury moves fast, so it goes retrograde quite often. With Mercury being retrograde, people give it a bad rap, but I don't like to give any of it a bad rap. What I like to do is to see what is in there for us. What is it bringing us? Maybe through a challenge, maybe through a delay, maybe through an unexpected occurrence, maybe through a breakdown in communication, maybe not going on that holiday because the tickets were incorrect. So I still remember a story of someone who booked a trip to, I think it was to Paris, but they only bought a return ticket, not one to go out there. So they could come back from somewhere they couldn't get to. I mean, that is a typical Mercury retrograde scenario, but it doesn't necessarily mean that things are going to go wrong all the time. That's not it. It means to be more mindful. So my Mercury represents communications in general. It's related, it's a ruling planet of Gemini. Gemini, the communicator. It's to do with knowledge and short distance travel, which is why those journeys in the car can be lots of hold ups. So I saw a couple of days ago, I saw somebody on my Facebook that wouldn't know anything about this posting up about a journey that she was on that was just a nightmare and she'd had enough. And I could have put a comment on there saying hashtag Mercury retrograde, but I don't think she would have really known what I was talking about. Whereas another friend of mine who comes to my moon ceremonies and was fully aware and fully prepared still had a really, really challenging travel scenario happen. So, she said, she was fully prepared. She's a professional organizer, so she was very organized, but, it still came up. But what was in it for her to learn? And I'm sure she'll be able to tell me that when I speak to her. So a Mercury retrograde would be about noticing, particularly in Leo. So Leo is all about it's all about the heart. So it's this internal thing, and it's an internal feeling of the heart, and it's also our self-expression, how we express ourselves. So we would want to look at mindful communication, noticing our self-talk, questioning thoughts that maybe don't support us, but that negative self-talk, dropping into our heart space, and how would we like to be spoken to by ourselves? We don't expect others to talk to us like that, so why ourselves? So it could be about how you're communicating to the world as well, because Leo is all about being seen. So to give you an example, Mercury is traveling through Leo right now. Leo for me is the 9th house. Astrology is associated with the 9th house of higher learning. So I am reviewing my podcast. I'm reviewing how I share this higher learning information with you all. I also have Venus in Leo, and this retrograde is not going over my Venus, but when Mercury turns direct again, it will be passing my Venus. So I am reflecting on Venus in Leo is about being in the spotlight, is about self-worth. So it's also because of that 9th house, it's about being a teacher. So I am reviewing, reflecting, journaling around how I teach astrology via my podcast, how I come across to you, how I communicate with you, and and around that subject of self-worth, I have also reviewed my fees, because I know that even though Mercury isn't to do with money, um, it is to do with the mind and thought. But Venus is to do with money and how we value ourselves. So I am using this energy to look at how I value yourself, and I have put my prices up to what they should be, because I was undervaluing myself as an astrologer. So that gives you an idea. So moving on, we also have Pluto retrograde, and Pluto has actually been retrograde since May the 4th and is going to be retrograde until October the 13th. Pluto retrograde is deep psychological excavation. It's digging deep into the psyche, the lord of the underworld. In myth, that is how Pluto is known: small, dark, and intense, like an espresso coffee. So it could be about the resurfacing of old fears and patterns in your psyche. It could be out in the world, those same subjects, but we're really looking at how it might show up personally. But because Pluto is in Aquarius, Aquarius is, it's related to freedom. It's a bit of a rebel. It's a bit of a genius. It thinks differently. But it's also related to the future. So I would suggest that these old fears that may be resurfacing, that we're excavating and digging down deep to have a look at, are from the future that you might be afraid to meet. So a question to journal on is, where am I resisting the future that I'd like to be in? And I know there's only such thing as now. So one of the things that we were talking about at the new moon ceremony the other night was using a technique where, rather than using an affirmation, you use a question to say, how did I overnight change my past fears so that I am now living in the moment that I wanted to be living the dream that I wanted to be living, rather than an affirmation that our brains know is not true, to ask ourselves the question of, how did we do that? And then letting the subconscious, that deep, under the surface subconscious, work out the answer, rather than us having to try and think of the answer. Mercury's retrograde at the moment. We might not be able to work it out. With Neptune being retrograde as well, it could be confusing and foggy. So a really good question is to have a look at those unconscious beliefs, how the way they shape how you speak Mercury, how you think Mercury, and those fears Pluto. Yep. Which will help ultimately to give you some power and to allow you to step into your authenticity. That new moon in Leo, self-expression. So this is how we bring it all together. Neptune next. So Neptune retrograde. And remember that Neptune is swimming along with Saturn at the moment. They are conjunct. And Saturn is also retrograde. So these two together, they're only 1 degree apart, and they are currently in Aries. So we're getting we've had a taste of what it's like for those two planets to be in the sign of Aries, in that new beginning. But if you remember back to my podcast, beginning and ending and a beginning and ending and ending a beginning, we're going back to that ending again, because they will be drifting back into Pisces for a while and then forwards again into Aries. And that will be the last time they do that before they stay in the sign of Aries. So July the 4th was when the Neptune retrograde commenced. And that's in Aries. So Aries to do with awakening. It's all to do with awakening our childhood dreams, our hopes for ourselves. So, maybe one of those things that's come up for me is that I dreamed of being a dancer, and now I'm actually, in a roundabout way, dancing again, because I'm currently teaching bar classes, which I didn't go looking for, it came to me. So I'm kind of going back over that love for dance, my childhood dream at the moment. Neptune is a very slow moving planet. So when it moves into Pisces again, that's going to be the last time that it does it for 165 years. So whatever you've got to go back over right now, and as it goes into Pisces, you won't have to do that again in this lifetime. So, roll on the next lifetime. So yeah, it's going to re-enter on October the 22nd, and then it will turn direct on December the 10th, and then it will finally move back into Aries on January the 26th, 2026. So we've got a 26 happening there. We'll see what that brings. But it's about getting clarity on our dreams, going back over our dreams, also going over any and reflecting on where we've been under an illusion, where we've been disillusioned, where we've been deceived to deception. So a really good thing to do is just to spend 5 minutes sort of just going back over your dreams, picking one of them, and then just spending 5 minutes before you go to sleep and to ask yourself, just to visit this in my dreams, but noticing how it feels in your body. Does it feel aligned? Does it feel good? Is it true? Or is it an illusion? That's the kind of work that you can do with a Neptune retrograde. And I'm being very light on this, and we can dive into it deeper further down the line. Because we've got a bit of time for all of this to come up. But again, have a look at the house area that's showing up for you to get an idea of where that energy is. Saturn retrograde also. So Saturn retrograde began on July the 13th. It's going to go into Pisces September the 1st, stations on November 27th, and moves forwards the day before Valentine's Day next year. Planet of reality on Valentine's Day, turning direct. Woohoo! But Saturn retrograde would be about focusing on your commitments. It's to do with responsibility, maturity, goals as well. So an inventory of your commitments would be a good idea. An honest assessment of your commitments, and getting rid of the ones that don't align, and sticking and committing to the ones that are for your highest good, particularly as we're going to be going back into Pisces. So that is your spiritual goals, committing to that spiritual practice again. Maybe choose one priority for the day that aligns with those goals and commit to giving it your full attention. For me personally, remember Saturn and Neptune are conjunct, so they are strengthening each other. It's getting realistic on your dreams and making the dreams a reality. That's the way I like to look at it. Ultimately, it can all come with challenges, particularly with Saturn involved there, but remembering those challenges are for our highest good. For me, it's going to be going back into my 4th house, but currently it's in my 5th house of pleasure. So that is how I know where to look for where this will be showing up. And finally, before we come to an end here, Chiron is going to be turning retrograde on July the 30th until January the 2nd next year. So these are all quite long retrogrades. And here is my little wise one back to help us with a little bit of advice here. So that Chiron being retrograde will be, it's to do with, not just to do with our wounds, but what the wounds are teaching us in this lifetime. Core wounds related to things all to do with Aries, to do with who am I, to do with the self, to do with identity, to do with courage. I know that Aries is also Chiron, Saturn, Neptune, all in my 5th house of pleasure. So, who am I in that area of self-expression, of creativity, of joy? But I thought what I would do is finish up with this Rumi quote that I came across. Well, I believe it's Rumi anyway. I can never be 100% certain where these quotes come from, but I rather liked it because with all these retrogrades, we're going to get multiple things coming up for us. And I thought this was perfect way to express how we could invite them all in, welcome them all to help us grow personally, and to reap from it what we need rather than be a victim to it. So this being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Uranus. Welcome and entertain all, Leo, even if they are a crowd of sorrows, Neptune and Saturn, who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, Mars. Still treat each guest honourably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight, Pluto. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing, Jupiter, and invite them in. Be grateful for whomever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond, Rumi. I hope this has helped you in some way. Remember Leo is all about the heart. We're still in that new moon energy. Drop into your heart no matter what. Invite them all in, meet them at the door with laughter to see who has been sent as a guide today. So I wish you all a wonderful weekend and I will see you all next week.